Hello genies and geniuses, my name is TBS Guy, and we just got our first look at the new live-action Aladdin remake, and with it we got our first look at Will Smith as the genie. Now, Twitter has been dutifully busy dunking on it for the past hour as I write this, so I thought rather than doing that, let's take this as an opportunity to talk about the genie as a character, how he's designed, and what he means to the story of Aladdin. Let's ask, in short, what's the deal with the genie? Disney's 1994 movie Aladdin is a movie about people who are trapped by their positions in society, and it's about their struggles to break free from those destinies. Aladdin is condemned to be poor because he was born poor and therefore he will die poor. He longs to break free from that fate and go live in luxury in the Sultan's palace. Jasmine is condemned to marry a prince and nothing but a prince, whether she wants to or not, because she was born a princess and that is what is expected of her. She longs to break free from the confining walls of the palace and experience the freedom to choose a life and a partner for herself. The genie is condemned to use his infinite power to grant wishes for others for all eternity and longs to be free to use his powers for himself. Even the Sultan and Jafar are bound in one way or another by their positions. The Sultan is a caring father who wants to do right by his daughter, but he is bound by the law and his own fatherly concern for her well-being after he is gone to force her to marry. He does eventually realize that he's the Sultan, he can just change the law, but coming to that realization is his particular mini-arc as a character. Jafar is trapped by his position in society as well. He's forced to play advisor and second banana to the Sultan, unable to ever ascend, unable to ever wield real power and Agrabah for himself. He's a villain, of course, but his motivation is still of a similar nature as that of the heroes. Because of that, the film is full of imprisonments and prison imagery. Jasmine with her birds, the pillars around the Sultan's throne room suggesting the bars of a cage, Aladdin thrown into the dungeons, Aladdin trapped in the Cave of Wonders, Genie trapped by the lamp, Jasmine in chains to Jafar, and then of course Jafar trapped in the lamp. So, the genie then. Thematically, the genie represents the opportunity for freedom. He represents phenomenal cosmic powers that could transcend any barrier, overcome any challenge, make you any person you want to be, no matter what might be standing in your way. He represents freedom not only from the rules of society, but from the laws of physics and even logic itself. The genie changes his size and shape. He creates multiple copies of himself and then destroys them. He transforms into objects and animals. He even breaks the fourth wall and all continuity by performing parodies and impressions of pop culture, celebrities, movie stars, submarines, and flight attendants, things which really should not exist and which he shouldn't be able to know about in medieval Arabia. The genie represents freedom, a freedom which both Aladdin, Jasmine, and Jafar crave, and a freedom which he can never have for himself. So how do you get all of that into a character design? Well, of course you don't. No character design can contain all of that in a single look or costume, and so the Disney animators never tried. Supervising animator Eric Goldberg took a lot of visual inspiration for the genie from the caricatures of Al Hirschfeld, which are very simplistic, but which get a lot of expression from long, swooping lines and curls and S-curves. The result of that inspiration is a character design with very little detail, but almost infinite expressiveness. The genie's basic shape is a big, bulging, upside-down teardrop with almost no visible anatomy. He's shirtless, but he has no abs, no visible pecs. Most of the time, the genie doesn't even have visible joints, no clear elbows or even knuckles on his fingers. He's made of swoops and curls and curves and circles. There's only one part of the genie that really looks hard or solid, and that's his manacles. When you first see them, of course, you assume that they're some sort of bracelet or jewelry, but they're actually symbols of his imprisonment. They are shackles, which is why they're made of hard metal, where pretty much everything else about the genie is made of smoke and liquid. The design is partly, of course, about the genie's role as comic relief. Being simplistic, flexible, and transformative lends itself well to all the extreme expressions and wild body language and crazy transformations that emerge naturally from Robin Williams' voice performance. In fact, the genie's character design was created in part to pitch the film to Williams in the first place. Lead animator Eric Goldberg animated the genie performing some of Williams' stand-up routines as a way to entice the actor onto the project. Genie's visual design, then, is flexible and simple, both because it needed to be in order to make it possible and feasible to animate as wildly as they needed to in order to capture Williams' voice performance, but also because flexibility and simplicity is what the genie represents in the story. All those complicated social rules and class struggles and economic conditions, nah. Just say, I wish to be a prince, and you get to be one without all the complicated details of politics or logic getting in the way. The simplicity of his color scheme and the clever little details of the curly bearded earring enables him to transform physically in hundreds of different ways while still fundamentally looking like the genie, even when he's looking like Jack Nicholson or Groucho Marx or whoever this guy is. I don't actually know who that guy... I always just assume he was a talk show host or something. Anyway, let's talk about the remake, the live-action version. We have a grand total of about 6 seconds, that's about a Vine's worth of footage of the Will Smith genie, so it's too early to say whether the new version of the character is going to be good or bad. But what we can say is that Will Smith's The Genie is unquestionably and 100% Will Smith. He moves like Will Smith, he sounds like Will Smith, and he looks like Will Smith in some makeup and with some CGI thrown on. Now, from a character design perspective, what that tells me is that Disney really wants everybody to know, and they don't want anyone to ever forget, that Will Smith is the genie in this movie. They had the option to create him as a fully CG or motion captured character, but they wanted Will Smith and his face and his physique and his physical acting in the movie. That, to me, is more a business decision than anything, and one of the consequences of that decision is that the genie in this version doesn't really look like smoke or water or a balloon or an inflatable squishy toy. He looks like a human being with blue skin. He looks solid and a little bit small, where the original genie always looks expansive and liquid. He looks very specifically like Will Smith, where the original genie had a look that was flexible enough that he could take on the appearance of any number of other celebrities while still retaining some recognizability. And so the question I have for this version is, can it transform like the original genie could? Can it swell with power? Can it duplicate itself, change costume on a whim, break the fourth wall, defy logic? Can this genie represent unlimited power and freedom in the way that the story needs him to? The answer to that question, of course, is maybe. This promotional screenshot at least implies that the genie will be doing some size transformation. And again, we have only seen about 6 seconds of the guy. There really isn't a basis to make a real judgment on. This isn't really an old design good, new design bad kind of a video. What I wanted to discuss is what the old design accomplishes, what it does for the movie, what it got right, and establish, well, at least for myself, a set of criteria that I can judge the new genie on, something to hold it up against in order to figure out how I really feel about it. Can this genie be what the movie needs him to be? Well, I'm curious to find out. I will be watching this thing in the cinemas unless the reviews are absolutely awful, and once I have, maybe I'll make another video. Hey, thank you very much for watching. This was probably the shortest What's the Deal video ever, because I decided to script it a little bit more tightly rather than doing my usual, disjointed ramble. So if you have any thoughts about that, well, you can leave the comments down below. You can talk a little bit about what the original genie meant to you, like why he was such a wonderful animated performance, or indeed why you didn't like him. I'm sure there are some people who hate fun out there. You can also do the like, subscribe, bell icon, usual YouTube nonsense, and if you are so inclined, then patreon.com is where you can support this channel more directly. If you have $1 that you don't mind me having, then you can pledge it to the channel over there, and it'll help me with stuff like rent and food and keeping the lights on. If you don't want to sign up for like a recurring subscription thing every month, well, I do have a coffee where you can give me like a one-time tip to say, hey, good job on the thing that you made, and that I would be very grateful to receive it. Of course, if you're not in a position to be able to afford doing either of that, or you just don't want to, that is also completely okay. I'm just really happy that you've watched the video this far. If you have not enjoyed this video, well, then there is a dislike button down below with which you can express that particular displeasure to the algorithm, and the algorithm then shall hold court and decide a fate for this particular video. If it is found not in favor, well, truly then it will be led to the pits of obscurity and left there to languish and despair. Unless, of course, 10 years down the line, someone finds it and does an ironic meme YouTube poop compilation cringe remix thing with Fortnite dances and then becomes a hit. I don't know what memes are anymore, man. I'm really old. Thank you very much for watching.